My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
I'm State Senator George Logan, and welcome to this edition of the Senate Reports. You know, all of the talk and the rave throughout Connecticut has to do with the budget. The budget, the budget. The state has experienced an expanding deficit. We're looking at almost $5 billion over the next 2 years. So what we have today, we're going to cover the topic of the budget. And with us today, we have the pleasure and the luxury of having State Senator Paul Formica with us here today. He is co-chair of the Appropriations Committee. So we're going to talk about his background a little bit, and we're going to chat about what the Appropriations Committee does for our state and what their role is in terms of approving a state budget. Welcome, Senator Formica. How are you today?
Thank you so much.
Good
Pleasure
to see you.
Be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Thank you from your busy schedule. You know, the Appropriations Committee is one of the busiest committees in the legislature. So I thank you for taking the time to come and talk to the folks in the state of Connecticut through this program. What I'd like to do before we get into the Appropriations Committee is folks need to know a little bit more about you, Senator Formica. Let's chat a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Connecticut?
I did. I was born in Cheshire, Waterbury Hospital, actually, St. Mary's, and grew up in Cheshire and left and got into the restaurant business as a young man. And one thing led to another, and I found my way back to Connecticut, where I opened up a small fish market and restaurant in 1983 in East Lyme, where I made my home and got married, had 4 kids. Wow. And it's a wonderful experience. It's a great town, and I got involved in the community, Chamber of Commerce, the business organizations, and then you do, all the things you do when you have 4 kids under 7, right? You're on Little League fields and band concerts, and so that involvement in the community gave us the opportunity to kind of look around and see what the connectivity was between business and local government, and so that's what started. I got involved on the zoning commission as as my first start, and it was a result of some new regulation they were passing with a site plan restriction for commercial development, and I said, hey, what's going on with this? And they said, oh, don't worry about it, it'll never pass. So I said, okay. Next week I read the paper and it passed 6-0.
Wow.
So a friend of mine and who had another restaurant in town, we ran for zoning and we won. And together, he was a Democrat, I was a Republican, and we rewrote the regulation to something that made more sense for business and industry and for the town, and got unanimous support. And
excellent. I
ended up serving 8 years on zoning and 8 years on finance. And
wow.
I ran for state representative in 2006, and I lost, and I figured, well, that'll be it for that. Right. But the next year I was convinced to run for First Selectman, 2007, and First Selectman is kind of in East Lyme, it's a combination mayor, do all the ceremonial things there, and city manager. I was in charge of all the employees in the buildings and vehicles and roads, and I was the administrative chief of police and chairman of the Water and Sewer Commission. So I have a little connection with your background. And,
wow. And what an experience. I mean, it just goes to show, here in the United States, here in Connecticut, the sort of citizen government, how that works well. I mean, here's an example. You as an individual, owner of a restaurant, really a good people person, similar to my reason for getting into politics. I wasn't liking what I was seeing in Hartford, so I decided to throw my hat in the ring, similar to what you have done. Your trajectory has been incredible. I mean, you have a great amount of experience, and all of that, I'm sure, has helped tremendously with your role now as co-chair in appropriations. In terms of running the business, do you still own the business now? Do you still run the
I
restaurant?
do. This is our 34th year.
Excellent.
Fish market and restaurant. We've expanded from a 600 square foot single family home to a much larger facility, couple dining rooms, catering, full service fish market. I have two children that work in the business. One has a business degree from Delaware. She works out front with a longtime manager, and my youngest has a culinary degree from the Culinary Institute of America.
Excellent.
And so she runs the kitchen, but I'm involved in the, overseeing a little bit of that, and they leave questions for me, and I go in every Saturday and Sunday. And but it's been a great experience for me learning about business. I was never in business before, so you learn as you go. I think I was one of the few people who actually operated a small business in a local municipality during the Great Recession.
Right.
So you understand that it's not so much about dollars and cents
Right.
as it is about people and passion. Right. Because without people coming together and sharing ideas and sharing solutions, that the real answers come. And it ends up, sure, dollars and cents are the reason, but if you can't get people talking to each other, you're not going to have it done. And that's in a business, in a small town, in a large city, and here in the state. And that's where I think the historic tie 1818 in the Senate is playing an important role.
Now, your experience in the business community, in the business world, your ability to work with people, your ability to work with folks on both sides of the aisle is something I think has been really advantageous in terms of your role as co-chair on appropriations. What do you do to bring folks together in terms of to try to solve some of the common problems we have? For example, in this case, the state budget.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I took an example when I was first selectman again. 2008, really, by the time you're elected in December, and you begin to see the financial problems occurring. We had all of our pension money with the Hartford. They were starting to waver a little bit. So I went and talked to the Democrat Town Committee, and I said, listen, guys, this is not a one-sided problem.
Right.
We had just come off 3 failed budget referendums in East Lyme, and we needed people to come together. And out of that meeting, I got volunteers on pension committees, on building committees. So I've tried to bring that same opportunity here in Hartford, where
Excellent.
You go and you understand that for the most part, people are here for the right reason.
Right.
They really want to help.
Mm-hmm.
But philosophically, we may disagree. Right. But somewhere in the middle is a solution we got to get to. So I've tried to reach out to everybody. What I didn't know about the situation here in Hartford my first 2 years in the process, I tried to learn about people and who they were and what made them tick and why they were here and how we could best work together. And I think that's the single biggest problem that we need to solve in Hartford is how do we get together? How do we sit together? How do we share our ideas? Because the rest of it's just money. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of money.
Yes,
it's
indeed.
$5 billion the wrong way, but we need to change our philosophy and how to manage it. But we can do that if we have some new ideas, and I think the Republican Party this year has been able to put some ideas forward that make some good common fiscal sense. And we can come together and win this thing.
Absolutely. So let's talk about more specifically in terms of the Appropriations Committee. Some of our viewers may not know exactly what is the role of the Appropriations Committee and what exactly do you guys do and what are you charged with as far as your highest priority as it stands now in this session?
Well, there's 27 committees currently in the state legislature. The Appropriations Committee handles the expenditures of the state budget. Mm-hmm. The Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee handles the revenue. And unlike cities and towns where you figure out the revenue first and then you match your expenditures to that, we kind of do a little backwards up here. We cut and deal with our expenditures in one committee without not much conversation with the revenue side. So I think that's one of the first things that needs to change. But we have 58 members on the committee, which is very cumbersome to manage. There's 3 chairs now, a chair from the House, because they have the majority. That's the majority appoints the chairman, so there's a Democrat from the House, Representative Walker. And because of the tie in the Senate, there's a co-chair. I co-chair with my Democrat colleague, Senator Austin, and we share that. So what happens is that the agencies come and they speak to the Appropriations Committee, and they very similar to what they do in local boards of finance, where they say, this is what we're doing, this is what we need, this is our budget, we present to you. The committee then is broken down into a number of smaller subcommittees where there
Excellent.
might be 6 or 8 people who grab 4 or 5 agencies and really get into the weeds.
Right.
And those subcommittees report to the chairman. The chairman spent 2 weeks together to come out with a budget, and this year we couldn't agree, so the budget didn't come out for the first time. I'm not sure, first time maybe ever. But you know, we had some folks that wouldn't agree to a tax increase. So that's the process where we are now.
It's an amazing, a huge responsibility. I mean, the sheer number of folks on that committee. I myself serve on 5 different committees, and none of them have over 50 people like your Appropriations Committee does. So it's, again, a testament to your leadership ability to be able to pull those folks together to come up and work on such a common and huge problem issue we have, which is the state budget and dealing with the deficit. What I'd like to do now, we're going to take a little break, and then in the next segment, we're going to specifically talk about the budget and where we stand in terms of the different proposals that are out there for trying to pull together a budget. So again, my name is George Logan, State Senator George Logan. This is the Senate Reports. I'm here with State Senator Paul Formica, and we'll be back in a few short moments to go over our next segment, which would be on the budget itself.
I started skipping school at the age of 7. My mom didn't realize until she actually went to go pick up my notes. And she realized I was getting left back. After that, I started hanging out with the wrong crew. I ended up in jail 3 times. Parents, what I'm trying to say is keep on top of your kids. Make sure you call, make sure you do what you gotta do. You know, parents, school is important. It's a big deal.
Welcome back. Again, my name is State Senator George Logan. This is the Senate Reports. And in this segment, we are going to chat about the state budget in detail. Here in Connecticut, the process works that and usually in February, the governor comes out with his initial proposed budget. The legislature gets a chance to mull over that. And then usually the Appropriations Committee comes out with a budget as well. And then some work is usually done to kind of meld the two together. This year, in addition to that, the Republican Party has come up with its proposed budget as well, one that doesn't include any tax increases, for example. So with us here today, we have State Senator Paul Formica. He is with the Appropriations Committee. He is a co-chair, and we're going to discuss a little bit in detail the Republican budget and what that means in terms of the Appropriations Committee and what they're working on and where we stand in terms of coming up with a state budget. The session officially ends on June 7th this year. There's a chance that we can go into a special session or extra session if we're not able to come up with a budget by June 7th. I suspect that we will be going beyond June 7th, given the fact that at this point in time, the Appropriations Committee, which is controlled by the Democratic Party, has been unable to come up with a budget as of late. So again, here with me now, we have State Senator Paul Formica. How are you?
Good.
Senator,
Thank you.
good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep. And again, I'd like to chat with you about the Republican plan. So the governor came out with a plan. A lot of folks weren't too crazy about the governor's plan. It included things like moving $400 million from the teacher's pension from the state level down to the municipalities. Was one that was not very well liked. It includes $700 million of concessions from the state unions, which may be tough to achieve. What is the Republican plan, and how does it differ from what the governor proposed?
Well, the Republicans have come forth each and every year, I think, certainly since I've been here and before that, probably at least over the last 6 years, where we provided a dozen budgets that focus on being able to move the state forward without tax increases. So that was,
Did you say no tax increases?
No tax increases.
No tax increases. The Republican budget does not include any tax increases.
Does not include tax increases.
Do the people of Connecticut seem to like that? Do you think they would like a budget with no tax increases?
Well, I think people have had their fill of tax increases and are probably looking for another way to do things. So I don't think people are ready for another tax increase. And I know certainly everybody in our caucus, when we put this together, that was the base from where we started.
Right.
And
so when you refer to our caucus, you're referring to the Republican caucus.
Republican caucus.
I heard one Democratic representative talking about the largest tax increase in the history of the state of Connecticut back in 2011. We had the largest tax increase in the state of Connecticut. We had the second largest in 2015. His opinion of those two tax increases, we're in a current fiscal crisis right now. His take on it was that the reason why those historically large tax increases did not work was because they weren't large enough. They weren't big enough. That we didn't increase the taxes enough. What's your take on that?
Well, you got to see what's working. Mm-hmm. And clearly, large tax increases have had the opposite effect. We can go back to the early 90s when the income tax was implemented here, long before you and I had the opportunity to serve. And the budget has gotten larger, and the deficits have also gotten larger as a result of those increased spending, because new program after new program necessitated tax increase after tax increase. So you flash forward to where we are now, the last 5 or 6 years, these large tax increases have had the effect, given the opportunities with digital and internet, businesses can move much more freely than they could 10 or 15 years ago. Businesses are leaving the state. People are choosing to retire and take their pension income elsewhere where they don't pay tax on it. So it's had the opposite effect. It's not generated revenue, it's actually cost revenue.
So you are of the opinion, and I share that opinion, that trying to right the ship in terms of our fiscal situation is not going to be accomplished by increasing taxes on the folks that are left behind here in Connecticut and increasing spending at the same time.
Well, there's only so much you can take from people at a period of time, and there's only so much that people are going to take from us. And increasing taxes is not anything that anybody wants to do. It's certainly, I agree with you 100%, not something that we want to go to.
So you think folks are maxed out when it comes to increasing the income tax beyond what it is now, increasing sales tax beyond what it is now?
Well, it's driving people out. And the reason that we're having the deficits that we're having is that the revenue that's projected to balance the budget is not being achieved. And it's not being achieved because people are taking their earning power and moving to different states. And that earning power comes with tax paying. And so they're paying less, and that's the problem. And the reason that we're in this fiscal situation now, there are 3 budgets that are out there. The governor puts his proposal, which uniformly I think was agreed to be a non-starter. Mm-hmm. The teacher retirement sharing was something that was just egregious to many towns and cities. The ECS formula, where he decided all of a sudden to cut towns like Groton $14 million in 1 year.
And the ECS formula being the education cost sharing formula?
Exactly, and that's the state's contribution to local education, which statutorily the state is required to do 50% of that funding.
Wow.
But every year over the last dozen or so years, the laws have been passed to say, well, we're only going to do X number of a percent. We're never going to achieve that. So the problem with changing that formula and cost shifting it to the towns, changing a formula for the hospitals and cost shifting all of that expense to the hospitals, the new proposal about making nonprofits and hospitals take away their exemption from real estate taxes.
So take away the exemption for nonprofits and hospitals? So in other words, nonprofit companies who have been tax exempt would then have to pay taxes under the governor's plan?
Under the governor's plan, there's some opportunity for hospitals to pay real estate taxes. Now imagine the size of hospitals and the amount of tax that would generate. And in his proposal, he kind of worked his way through an opportunity to get reimbursement through a Medicaid system. And, you know, it was just too convoluted. But as you pointed out rightly at the beginning of the segment, that's the process. The governor comes out first. He presents or she presents, and then the others react. Well, the Republicans have taken that budget, and in the one that we proposed, we eliminated the hospital tax part. We eliminated the teachers' retirement benefits. We put our own ECS formula.
When you say eliminate the teachers' retirement benefits, you mean in terms of pushing those costs down to the towns?
Exactly. I'm sorry. Yeah, teachers still get their retirement and all of that. But the $1.3 billion bill that we have this year to fund teachers' retirement, the governor proposed $407 million of that to go to the town.
And who would pay that if it goes to the town?
Interestingly enough, of that $1.3 billion, $283 million of it is the current year. The rest of it is from past years not getting funded. So what the governor wanted to do is to have cities and towns fund some of the problems of the past and begin to take up the current. So who would pay for that? That would go into city and town budgets, and that would end up being the burden of the property taxpayers.
Property taxes, even higher mill rates under the governor's plan.
And perhaps having to choose a reduction in service, having to eliminate local town programs that we need. And people, for example, Groton, 14 million. They're talking about closing schools, laying off teachers, moving, because they don't know where we're going to end up. And so that's why it's important for us to come together, take some of these ideas that we have in the Republican budget as a base, talk to the people that are in power up here, the governor and other leaders, and say, cities and towns need to know. We can't be doing this in June and July and August. They need to know what their budgets are now. So I'm hoping we don't have a special session. I'm hoping by June 7th we can bring everybody together and get a budget voted out that is a no tax increase budget. But if I can just briefly talk to you about, as these three budgets come together, the revenue that's based on these budgets is the January numbers that come out. The fiscal year for the cities and towns and the state is from July 1 to June 30th. So January is the halfway mark. So we fashion these budgets, and our no tax increase balanced budget was predicated on revenue that we determined from that January number, as was the other two. Well, as we get our appropriation deadline of April 27th, the new revenues for the next quarter, the consensus revenues, when people pay all their taxes on April 15th, those numbers start to come in. And those numbers do two things. One, they fund the rest of this year, which ends June 30th, and they're a bellwether or a barometer for next year, what we can expect the revenue to be for next year. This year they came in on a Monday, $290 million short.
Incredible.
And by the following Friday, we were up to $450 million short revenue for this year. Now, our rainy day fund's only $230 million. So what do we do to balance a budget that we're in the 10th month mark? We got to come up with that shortfall between now and June 30th, and at the same time put a budget together next year that is reflective of those lower numbers, of those people leaving, of those businesses not providing tax increases.
A huge challenge, for sure.
And it's a huge challenge, and it's something that we got to do to come together. But that's where we are, and the Appropriations Committee did not come out with a budget because we did not agree. And I said to them, you have more Democrats on the committee than Republicans, so vote the budget out if you have the votes. And clearly they didn't. So I think that's an indication that both sides know that tax increases are at the very least, a last resort and a non-starter for many of us. So
super, great. Well, thank you, Senator Formica. Really appreciate that insight and that information. And again, my name is George Logan. This is the Senate Reports. I hope you found that information to be interesting, as I found it to be very fascinating to hear from Senator Formica and his experience in terms of how he is going about being a leader as co-chair of the Appropriations Committee to make sure that we have a workable, doable, sustainable budget for the state of Connecticut. I have one more segment to this program. We're going to take a short break, and I'll be back to talk about more budget stuff.
My name is J. Stan McCauley, and I do business as Light Source Productions. I provide professional services in the area of strategic video communications. First, what we do is we help you craft your message using what I call the rule of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. We do event documentation, content acquisition, full-scale productions, editing, and of course distribution through our social media television network. And with social media, video is more important now than it has ever been. Whether you're talking big business, small business, nonprofit, church, or just an individual. Let's say you plan you're planning an event, a wedding, whatever the case may be. But let's say a big event, but no video. And you spent all this time, all these hours to put this event on, and maybe 100, 200 people attend the event. But more important than that is that thousands could attend by watching it on social media. But of course, you don't think about this until after the event is over. You can't afford not to capture it for social media. And despite what people think, I am affordable. Give me a call. Let's plan your next video project and share it with the world on my social media television network. I promise you that you will have the attention of one person, me.
These are the monsters of the road. Ever drive alongside a tractor trailer in the rain? Scary. You're hoping they don't change lanes. Now they see you, now they don't. This monster can crush you in an instant. They may be insured for millions, but you're not thinking of that in a dangerous situation. I'm attorney Jeffrey Dresden. Have an accident, you know what to do. Because this is what we do. 24/7, 11/22.
Hi, I'm Senator George Logan. Welcome back to the Senate Reports. In this segment, we're going to continue our discussion on the state budget. As most of you know out there, the state is in a fiscal crisis. Our state budget, as far as the deficit, has been expanding as of late. Is up to about $5 billion over the next 2 years. That's in a $19 billion per year budget. So we were talking with Senator Paul Formica, who is co-chair of the Appropriations Committee. And what I'd like to do is, we were talking about the governor's budget quite a bit in the last segment. I'd like to chat about the other proposed budget that's out there, and that's the Republican budget. First of all, I want to let you all know that if you want to go see the Republican budget, please go to www.ctsenaterepublicans.com to see the Republican budget in detail. This is a budget that closes the deficit without increasing taxes. That's a big component of the Republican budget. No tax increases. It increases education funding and includes a new educational cost-sharing formula. It holds towns harmless in fiscal year 2018 to overall municipal cuts. It maintains tax-exempt status for hospitals to protect them from a new local hospital tax that the governor's proposed budget, includes. It preserves core government services by restoring funding for social services and protecting funds for services and programs that benefit the people most in need. Unlike the governor's budget, the Republicans' budget is not trying to balance the budget on the backs of the folks that are in most need in our community, the most vulnerable. The Republican budget prioritizes transportation needs and stabilizes funding without tolls or new taxes. The Republican budget lowers taxes for retirees and helps seniors age in place. The Republican budget enhances funding for state parks and tourism. The Republican budget streamlines government and also provides structural changes, particularly to our tax code. So again, I want to thank Senator Paul Formica for joining us here and discussing the role of the Appropriations Committee. And again, to read the Republican budget, please go to www.ctsenaterepublicans.com. Now, in addition to the budget, I am doing work on 5 different committees. I'm on Planning and Development Committee. I'm on the Public Health Committee. I'm on the Education Committee, Veterans Committee, and Regulations Review. So in addition to working on those committees at the Capitol, I've been out and about in our region talking to folks in the 17th District towns and also throughout the state. So I want to just talk a little bit about, since the last time I had this program, some of the businesses and organizations that I've been able to visit. For example, I visited with the Hamden-based Lead Himmel Industries, again in Hamden. And Lead Himmel is a world-class aluminum fabricator, fabricating aluminum right here in Connecticut, in Hamden. They are a full-service supplier from design to extrusion to fabrication. And again, all of that is done right here in Connecticut, right in Hamden. Their emphasis is on custom products, again, dealing with aluminum and finishes. They employ about 100 people. This is an example of manufacturing here in Connecticut, manufacturing at a world-class level right here within our community that needs to be supported. I went out there, met with folks, the leadership of Lead Himmel, to talk about the business climate and ways that, as a state legislature, I can help to support their industry in terms of what they're trying to do, and particularly jobs. We need to keep the businesses that are here in Connecticut from leaving the state. And the only way one of the ways we can do that, a big way, is by talking to them and understanding what their issues are and what their challenges are for staying and doing work here in Connecticut. Also, I attended a tour following a ribbon cutting ceremony at Faro Pomini Rubber and Plastics in Ansonia. Faro Pomini actually built a new plant in Ansonia, beautiful state-of-the-art facility. This is an organization that employs just under 300 people in our community. I went on a plant tour. Faro Pomini offers a full portfolio of services, including new processing equipment for plastics, design and engineering. They provide that service right here in Connecticut, right here in Ansonia. They create, as far as plastics are concerned, spare parts, remanufacturing of plastic parts, and rebuilding of parts and pieces of complicated equipment. They do process engineering, again, right here in Connecticut at Faro Pomini, as well as field services, and they provide technical support. So I got a great tour there. As I was walking through the plant in Ansonia, my hometown, all of a sudden I started hearing, hey, Senator Logan, hi, George. There were folks in there from the community that I know. So this is a company that's hiring from the community, employing people in the region. Very, very significant, very important. I also went to visit Marrakech Inc. In Woodbridge. Marrakech Inc. Is not a manufacturer. They're not a financial organization or company. But what they provide and what the service that they provide is just as important as any of the other ones that I've mentioned. Marikek Inc. provides a broad array of programs for persons with disabilities, for children and adults with and without disabilities throughout Connecticut. They provide services to over 1,300 children and adults. Again, I'm talking about Marikek Inc. in Woodbridge. They serve over 1,300 people annually who face challenges including developmental and acquired disabilities, mental illness, and or substance abuse, and folks that are dealing with economic challenges throughout the state. Marikek out of Woodbridge also is an employer of hundreds of people in our community. So it's very important that we continue to support at the state level companies like Marikek. Also, again, I had a pretty busy last month here. I also visited the Early Childhood Center at Central Avenue School in Naugatuck. This is an early childhood center that has an entire building with approximately over 150 kids providing early childhood. I met the staff. I met the wonderful children and kids that are there providing good work from our folks, our teachers, our administrators in Naugatuck. I also attended in Beacon Falls this past weekend a Blue Star Memorial marker. This is a marker that's on a walkway in Beacon Falls that is there to help to acknowledge and pay tribute to those veterans who have fought and worked and served our United States of America to give us the freedom and liberties that we are all enjoying every day of our lives. I also attended the Beacon Hose Company #1. They had a promotion ceremony. That's where they brought in and gave promotions to folks within their ranks. So I attended that ceremony. I mean, it was a packed house, lots of support from the community. U.S. Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro was there as well. Representative Nicole Claritas Ditria was there as well. A wonderful ceremony. I also attended a Griffin Hospital baby fair, a baby fair in Griffin Hospital, which was wonderful. They were booths and organizations from all over the state providing information and services to new couples, expecting couples in terms of information and what they can expect in terms of being new parents. I also visited in Hamden a hunger mobile exhibit at Mishkan Israel in Hamden. This is a mobile truck that goes around the country highlighting hunger in America. This is not hunger in another country, faraway place. This is hunger right here in America. Wonderful, wonderful exhibit in terms of that play. I also held my monthly coffee hour at Three Brothers Diner in Hamden. And at that coffee hour in Hamden, which is the first Friday of every month at Three Brothers on Dixwell Avenue in Hamden, the issue overwhelmingly had to do with taxes. Taxes, and the budget. Folks are tired of taxes. Folks want to see the state come around and come up with a plan. I am confident that the Republican Party, my party, can fix this mess that we're in. We have a plan, and we're asking you, the public, to support us in terms of giving us a chance to execute and see that plan through. We have gone too long with plans that have not worked, budgets and tax increases that have only hurt the state of Connecticut. We need a new way. The Republicans have a plan, and I am confident that with each and every one of your support, we can get it done. We're talking about a tax plan a budget plan that has no tax increases, one that is an alternative budget to the governor's. As far as the Democrats are concerned, so far to date, here we are, almost the middle of May. Session's over in about a month. Still no proposed budget from the Democrats, but never fear, Republicans have a plan. Please go to www.ctsenaterepublicans.com to read all about that plan. And again, my name is State Senator George Logan. This is the Senate Report. Thanks very much again for tuning in, and I look forward to our next segment. Have a good rest of your week.